The courtroom fell silent the moment the old woman stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the worn scarf around her shoulders, and the faint echo of her footsteps carried through the massive marble chamber. Everyone in the room expected the hearing to end quickly. After all, the case seemed simple. Just another elderly citizen claiming something no one believed. But what no one realized in that moment was that within a few minutes, the most respected judge in the city would be left completely speechless. Before we begin this powerful story, take a moment to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that every person deserves respect no matter their age or status, please like this video, share it with others, leave a comment, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories like this to life. The woman's name was Martha Reed, a 73-year-old widow who lived quietly on the edge of town near the banks of the Red River. Her house was small and weathered, surrounded by tall grass and old wooden fences that had seen better days. Most people in the city barely knew she existed. To them, she was just another lonely elderly woman surviving on a modest pension. But on that particular morning, Martha Reed stood inside the grand courtroom because her land had been marked for government seizure. A massive development company planned to build luxury apartments along the riverbank, and Martha's property sat directly in the middle of the project. According to official documents, she had been given a warning months earlier, but Martha insisted she never received any notice. When the case reached the courtroom, the judge assigned to it was Harold Whitmore, a man known for his strict discipline and sharp tongue. Judge Whitmore had presided over thousands of cases, and he had little patience for people who wasted the court's time. To him, Martha looked exactly like the kind of person who might misunderstand legal paperwork and create unnecessary delays. As Martha stood nervously before him, holding a small folder filled with old documents, the judge barely looked up from his desk. His voice carried the tone of someone already convinced the matter was trivial. He asked her why she believed the land seizure was unfair and why she had ignored the official warnings. Martha tried to explain that she had never seen any warning letters. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, as if every sentence required courage. She told the court that the land had belonged to her family for generations and that she had lived there her entire life. But the judge seemed unimpressed. He glanced through the paperwork and pointed out that the city records clearly showed several attempts to contact her. When Martha mentioned that she had tried reaching out through a certain call sign connected to emergency communications along the river, the judge finally looked up with visible confusion. The courtroom stirred slightly as the judge repeated the phrase she had used. He said it with a faint smirk, as if the words sounded ridiculous to him. The call sign Martha had mentioned was Red River. The judge leaned back in his chair and asked why an elderly woman would claim to have a call sign like that. His tone carried a hint of mockery that several people in the courtroom noticed immediately. To him, it sounded like something out of a movie or an old radio show. But Martha didn't react with anger. Instead, she lowered her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she looked up again, there was something calm and steady in her expression. She explained that decades earlier, when the region faced devastating floods, volunteers across the river communities had created a network of emergency radio operators. Long before smartphones and modern communication systems, those operators helped coordinate rescue efforts during storms and disasters. Martha had been one of them. For years, she had spent nights sitting beside a large radio transmitter in her small house, monitoring signals and helping relay emergency messages between towns along the river. During several severe floods in the 1980s and 1990s, that volunteer network had saved dozens of lives by directing rescue teams to trapped families. Within that network, every operator used a call sign. Hers had been Red River. At first, the courtroom remained quiet but skeptical. The judge continued flipping through documents, seemingly unconvinced. But then something unexpected happened. One of the older clerks working in the courtroom slowly raised his head. His eyes widened as he stared at Martha, as if a memory had suddenly resurfaced. The clerk asked her a simple question. He asked if she had once coordinated a rescue operation during the massive flood 25 years earlier when an entire bus of schoolchildren had become stranded near the river bridge. Martha hesitated before answering, almost as if she preferred not to bring attention to the past. But eventually she nodded. A quiet ripple moved through the courtroom. That flood had been one of the most dangerous disasters the region had ever faced. The river had risen rapidly overnight, trapping vehicles and homes before emergency services could respond. According to official records, a mysterious radio operator had guided rescue boats through the rising water to reach the stranded bus. For years, no one had known who that operator was. The clerk explained that his own nephew had been one of those children. Suddenly the atmosphere inside the courtroom changed. Judge Whitmore stopped flipping through the paperwork. Slowly, he looked up at Martha again, but this time the expression on his face was different. The faint smirk had completely vanished. The clerk continued speaking, describing how the unknown radio operator had stayed on the air for nearly 14 hours straight, guiding rescuers through dangerous currents and helping evacuate families across several towns. Emergency crews had later credited that voice with preventing a tragedy that could have claimed many lives. That voice, the clerk said quietly, had used the call sign, Red River. Now the courtroom was completely silent. Martha stood quietly, her hands folded together, as if the attention made her uncomfortable. She explained softly that many volunteers had helped during those years and that she had simply done what anyone else would have done. But Judge Whitmore now looked deeply unsettled. He realized that the elderly woman he had casually mocked only minutes earlier had once been the unseen guardian of an entire community during its darkest hours. The judge leaned forward slowly, studying Martha with a new sense of respect. For the first time since the hearing began, he spoke to her with genuine humility. He admitted that the court records had failed to acknowledge the historical significance of the land she lived on. That small house near the river had once served as the communication hub for the volunteer network that protected the region during its most dangerous floods. The room remained silent as the judge made an unexpected decision. He ordered an immediate suspension of the development project while the city council conducted a historical review of the property. If confirmed, the site would be preserved as a recognized landmark honoring the volunteers who had protected the river communities for decades. Martha seemed surprised by the announcement. She had entered the courtroom expecting to lose the home she had lived in for most of her life. Instead, she walked out of the building with something far greater than legal victory. She walked out with her story finally heard, and the judge who had once mocked the name, Red River, remained seated behind his desk long after the courtroom emptied, quietly reflecting on how easily people overlook the quiet heroes living among them. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment the words, "Respect the unseen heroes," if you believe that kindness and humility should guide every act of justice. Because sometimes, the people we underestimate the most carry stories powerful enough to silence an entire courtroom.